guys, it is Two Bricks here, and this is going to be the final kind of showcase video for my Jurassic Park T-Rex build series. And you can see that since the last update video, I have built quite a bit of the surroundings and quite a few extra items that previously were not included. And so in today's video, we're going to show you how all of that looks together, and I'm going to give you a look at each of the individual elements separately as well. Plus, stick around till the very end because I'm going to do a T-Rex comparison between my rendition and the official Lego one. So that's going to be really cool. There's actually surprisingly a lot of really interesting similarities that I'm excited to point out to you guys. So yeah, with that being said, this is the completed model, and I'm just blown away by the fact that in the current kind of Lego parts collection that I have, I was able to put this whole thing together without ordering any additional pieces or without buying any other sets or anything. I didn't really think I had this much. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at what I've created here and the scene that we're depicting. So this is obviously completed Rexy. The only thing that's actually substantively changed since the last update was that her tail has been extended. I added this whole end chunk right here because when I compared it to the CG model from the 1993 movie, it really was a little too short. And then in the last update, I covered how I had beefed up the legs a little bit. And the only other thing that I did was I wanted to have the sensor rail that the park vehicles follow. So that was kind of interfering with Rexy's feet, so I just ended up changing out this one toe to be on a ball joint so that it could kind of rest on top of it, which I actually think adds a little bit of extra fun kind of interactivity where it looks like she's really kind of in the scene because she's stepping on that thing. So yeah, planting her feet and then kind of building up these slopes and kind of flattened areas around her feet. I just wanted to kind of show that she's really heavy and she's kind of squelching up the mud around her feet where she's standing. So that was something that I ended up doing. And then the whole, this whole section of the ground comes up with Rexy. So I can actually pull that out and show you guys her separately, which I'll do a little bit later on when we do our comparison. And I don't have to just like deal with the entire, background. So that was something that I thought was a good idea. And then I ended up continuing that kind of ground pattern that I had established before of just like a little bit of tiling and some of these trans dark brown plates and tiles to kind of show puddled areas and things like that. And I just had a little bit of indication of some of the grass that is off to this side of the road in the movie. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the terrain turned out. And then, of course, down at this end, we have a whole bunch of new stuff to look at as well, which is I've created the Ford Explorer and Dr. Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm as well. Previously, I had said that I thought it would be a good idea to have the Ford Explorer in its upside down, trashed, tire bitten off configuration. And I started building the model, and I realized very quickly that it was going to be a huge waste to just build all of this detail, building the nice color scheme into the hood and all that stuff, and then just flip it upside down and basically just be looking at a gray black lump underneath. So I changed it so that the vehicle that I'm depicting is the one belonging to Grant and Ian Malcolm, and then the trashed one would be over here off screen, where the model cuts off. But I actually think that improves the scene a great deal because, when I think about what is the action that I'm depicting, what is the verb of the scene, previously just having essentially a prop of a ruined vehicle, it didn't really add anything in that regard. So now the action that I'm depicting of the scene is Grant and Malcolm attempt to distract the T-Rex to save the kids. And then with these figures, I think they're pretty accurately sized to the T-Rex. I mean, a human being comes up to approximately knee height or just underneath the kind of belly where that stops of a T-Rex. And so, or at least the one in the movie. And if you took off Alan Grant's hat, I think he would be pretty much exactly the right height. So I think it all works out. Curiously enough, I didn't really realize this when I first started out, but I guess this whole model is kind of Lego Miniland scale, because these figures are approximately Miniland sized, and then they scale appropriately to the T-Rex. So you could just take this whole thing and put it into Legoland in their Miniland section, and it wouldn't look out of place. So that's kind of awesome. And one fun little detail that I wanted to add in here, again for kind of the sake of integration, is to have the tire tracks of the vehicle represented by these grill pieces, and I have that on both sides. And I thought that was something that kind of just, again, helps to really tie everything in to make it feel like these are all things that exist together in one place. And Grant is, his feet are built sideways, so there wasn't any way to stud in him to the base. So what I've done is I've ended up using these fairly new 1x1 bracket pieces in dark gray that just plug into the back of his feet and then hold him into the ground. Whereas with Malcolm, his feet are just built traditionally, and he's just plugged into the ground as normal. And then a couple of other fun little details on this model is I created the little kind of lights on and off that indicate that if the orange light is on, that means that the fence is electrified. So I just wanted to have that in there because I felt like, even though in reality the fence is probably slightly taller than what I've depicted here, I did want to show that the termination point at the top, just because it makes it feel a little bit more complete. And then I have the, oh, and here's the sign that just says danger 10,000 volts, and it has like a do not touch sign, which I've just represented as a red Imperial logo from, that was actually from the recent kind of action battle Star Wars sets where they have these kind of targets that you aim at. So I thought that worked pretty well for the sign. And that's the sign you see a few times in the movie, so I wanted to have that in there. And then here is the section of the fence that Rexy has bitten through and climbed through, and it's all kind of ruined. And so I thought that was a cool thing. Instead of just having, the completed fence all the way through, you can see a fair amount of that here. And then I thought this would be a nice opportunity to kind of vary it up a little bit. And then right down here in the back, I'll give you a closer look at him later on, but the best character in all of Jurassic Park, the goat. And you can see he's alive and well. The movie made it seem like he got eaten, but of course not. I mean, that's, it's ridiculous. Rexy and the goat were just putting on a performance for the tourists. And as far as the other flora that I've represented, I have essentially, trees that are more kind of traditional, mixed in with the kind of palm leaves and more exotic island plants. And then in the background, I have this kind of depiction of sort of the mountainous terrain, just very roughly blocked in with kind of simplistic green and gray shapes, because I just felt like I wanted to tie the whole scene in and just make it feel like there's a lot of depth in the back of, and the island is back there. The scene doesn't just end right where the fence comes to an end. And speaking of the fence, one thing that I thought was really important to get in here is that there's actually an angle to the wall and the fence where it leans back. And that's something that, I know, initially I was just like, well, I'll just build the wall straight up and down, and that'll just be the easiest way to do it. But I figured, I'm going to all this trouble to create this scene and give it as much authenticity as possible, so why not give the wall that slant? And it was actually quite simple to achieve. I just built this front wall section with the fence attached to it, and then I leaned it up against this structure right here, which is made of these tall slope pieces. And then I had like a little cutout in the back wall section where these parts of the fence would kind of fit in. And then once I built up the terrain on the bottom, it just kind of held everything in pretty nicely, and there really wasn't any issues. This is very, it's again, it's rickety because of the fact that it's Technic, but it's held in very nicely. All right, guys, so I'm going to give you a look at the Ford Explorer now, up a little bit closer. This is the 1994 edition that was brand new at the time that the movie came out, which is just hilarious to think about. This vehicle represents a number of firsts for me. It's the first time I've ever built a SUV of any kind. It's the first time I've ever built a car or any kind of vehicle at this scale. And I gotta say, I have so much respect for Lego designers and what they must go through to bring us those large, creator sets like the Ford Mustang and stuff. There's a lot of interesting challenges that go into creating a vehicle like this. So obviously for this, I wanted to be as accurate as possible. One of the reasons being that this is one of my favorite movie cars of all time. So I spent a long time trying to get the proportions correct and to be able to give you all of the recognizable features on this car. So, the big bull bar at the front with the lights on it, and I'm using some polybag TIE Fighter cockpit windshields for the lights to give a little bit of extra visual detail. These are just fairly simple built-up lights with cheese slopes and some trans clear and trans yellow plates in there. Grill is pretty simply done. I didn't have any lime green grill pieces, but I think that the olive green fits well enough into the color scheme. Doesn't really draw attention to itself. And then, all the different, I'm not sure what these lights function as, but I think they might just illuminate the track directly ahead of they might be to help kind of sense that track that the cars follow on the ground. And then I have the brick-built lettering here for Jurassic Park. I wasn't able to fit the whole word, but at least the hint of the word Jurassic I was able to put in there. And I kind of made the C look like a K just to kind of visually, I don't know, I guess when you look at the word Jurassic Park and it has that shape at the end and the J at the beginning, you can kind of fool your eyes into thinking that you're looking at the whole word in a way. And so yeah, that's just what I was trying to do with that. I didn't have any fancy kind of fender pieces or anything like that, especially not in lime green. So I ended up making these fairly clunky sloped assemblies that stick out of the side, but I think they do a reasonable job at what they're supposed to represent. There's a fairly narrow profile on these fenders in the real model, so I would like to get these, or in the real car. I'd like to get these a little bit more narrow, but I think it works okay. For the wheels, these are actually not, these pieces right here don't actually fit into these tires. I actually have black wheels underneath, and then I'm kind of forcing these yellow, what would be rims, into kind of just pinching them into the tire and pulling the tire forward on the rim. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't have any yellow rims, and these are the closest thing that I have in my collection. But I think it sells it pretty well. I don't feel like it looks like it's just something that's incorrect being forced into place there. I think it looks pretty natural. There is a full interior in the vehicle, which I'll give you guys a look at in a little bit once I tear the roof off of this guy. Going around towards the back, there's the fuel cap, and then this represents the kind of spray painted on number that each car has. I think this vehicle is number 4. I guess that's so that the park staff can keep track of which one is which. Got a simple indication for the license plate, and then these nice kind of grilled off light guards, I guess they are. These vehicles look like they're so kind of rugged and rough and tumble, and really all they do is just go along a road, which is cool. I like the kind of the pretense that this is a off-roading safari vehicle. That's fun. And then just some very simple representations for the lettering of what would say Ford Explorer, or I guess Ford on that side and Explorer right there. Pretty simplistic stuff, but I think for the scale it sells it pretty well. And then got the additional floodlights up here, and I really wanted to get a curved piece to represent that kind of bubble dome skylight that the real car has, but I didn't have anything like that in my collection. But I did feel like this X-Wing, this is from the UCS X-Wing, I believe, or actually this particular one came from the U-Wing set from Rogue One. It gives the right volume and the right profile for the scale of what I wanted, but it just doesn't have that curvature to it. But I think that having a single piece is better than some of the attempts that I had done to build up a kind of artificial curve into a piece, because having all those different sections kind of, I don't know, just creates a lot of visual noise that I wanted to avoid, I think having this cleaner single piece thing is a better solution. And then the same goes for my decision to not have windows or glass panels inside of the windows. I just think outlining the shape is a better choice, just for visual clarity's sake. All right, so with the roof pulled forward, it's just, just hinges around these bowl joints right here. I can give you guys a closer look at the interior. There is a representation of the steering wheel right here, the kind of redundant steering wheel since this is a self-driving car. The tan interior, and I was curious as to why they didn't have headrests on these seats. I think it was just to make it easier when filming so that they could kind of not be as encumbered on the inside of the car. And then a very simple representation of the gear stick. And then they have these interactive CD-ROM, which the kids get very excited about, where in the back and in the front they have these displays that show you kind of information about the park and about the dinosaurs that you're seeing. And then I just have a light aqua piece in there to represent the kind of park map screen. So I think that all works out fairly well. On the inside, I'm just kind of covering up what is a very messy assembly, which is necessary for the lettering. And I just have a couple of tiles of the dark tan color to just cover those over. I think it does it well enough. So yeah, there's where everybody would sit. And then in the back here, in the movie they kind of have like bubble wrap, because I guess these are like brand new, that covers over this crate. So I just wanted to represent that somehow, and so I just have this net sitting on the top. And then inside of the crate, which I can just pull out and show you guys, there's a couple of goodies. We have these night vision goggles, which Tim, the little kid, pulls out and starts messing around with. They look expensive though, so I'm not going to mess with those. Then we have this comically large flashlight, which Lex pulls out and starts shining right in the T-Rex's eye for some reason. And then that actually has like a cord coming off of it, and I'm not sure if that plugs into the car or if that plugs into whatever, I don't know, an external battery pack, but that is how that looks in the movie. And then we have a fire extinguisher, which can be seen when Grant goes back there to get the flares. And then I have a couple of extra flares in there as well. Put all that stuff back in there. And then the crate just closes up very simply with a couple of studs to hold the lid in place. And then on the inside, if I pull up this hatch, I have an indication in there for a spare tire. It's not the same profile as the one out here, just because I couldn't fit one back there of that size, but I wanted to at least have the idea that there could be a spare tire. And then that just fits very snugly back in there, and just sits on a couple of studs only, and that holds it in very nicely. And then when you want to put the roof back, you just kind of have to carefully align all these parts. And then as long as the A-frame here lines up with this red part, and as long as all these little clips kind of grab onto the plate where they're supposed to, it should be pretty much in line. All right, so there is the Ford Explorer. Again, a big first for me, and one of the coolest movie vehicles ever, I think, and just something I was really, really happy to be able to build. And the last thing to take a look at up close is the figures that I made to kind of complete the scene. This, of course, is Dr. Alan Grant, and I made him to kind of, I made him with the idea of him having the flair, being able to kind of achieve that pose that he does, because he moves the thing right and left and right, and I felt like I wanted him to be able to just kind of bring his arm out and across a little bit. So I gave him an articulatable waist, and I made his head be able to swivel so that he could kind of bring his arm across like this and be able to show the T-Rex, here. This is where you should look. And then just looking at the legs, they're very simply done with a couple of these ball joint pieces, and then terminating down here with his dark orange colored boots. And it would be nice if at some point Lego would give us different colors for these ball joints so that we could just avoid having ugly gray stripes down the middle of our figures like this. But if you pose it at the right angle and you kind of squint your eyes once again, I think you buy it. And I think that the trade-off between posability and the color, kind of the undesirable color, I think it's worth it, because figures like this can start to look incredibly stiff and unnatural without the posability that ball joints give you. So yeah, I have just a very simple represent the iconic ascot that he wears, which is just to use one of these hinge bricks, and the little hinge portion sticks out and represents that. And then his neck is just attached using this jumper piece. And yeah, it's pretty simplistic, and I think it's roughly Miniland scale. And then we have Dr. Ian Malcolm with his iconic deep cut V-neck shirt exposing his chest, which has now become a meme since then. I'm using a couple of these 1x1 dark brown or black trans clear tiles to represent his glasses. He's got cool unkempt hair that kind of almost resembles a mullet, but not quite. And then he's relying on the same ball joint type pieces for the hips, but this time I'm plugging those into these Technic pins with ball hitch on the end, and those just go into Technic brick on the bottom of his body. And then for the knees, I'm just relying on standard hinge pieces, the same ones that are used for the ascot in black, and then these 1x1 bracket pieces with the with the clip, the bar clip on the end, to give a little bit of extra posability to the ankles and the feet, so those can be rotated back and forth, and the feet can move side to side, as well as the knee joint. So he can get a lot of posability, even though he doesn't have ball joints for his for every part of his leg. So he also has the flare, because if you remember in the scene, he sees what Grant is doing, and then he thinks that it's his duty to help as well, and so he lights up a second flare and kind of messes up the plan and gets trampled on by the T-Rex, but he survives, so that's good. So there is Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm. And the final thing I have is the goat. And, in the movie, the kids feel very bad about what's going to happen to the goat. And fear not, he's here, he's alive and well, and nobody has to worry. So I think he's probably a tiny bit large. I mean, goats are fairly sizable animals, but he feels a little large in comparison to the T-Rex. But he's off behind the wall, so you wouldn't notice. Oops, excuse me. Sorry about that, Dr. Malcolm. So yeah, you probably wouldn't notice about the scale. I have one of these kind of feather quill pieces for the tail. It's just plugged into a hollow 1x1 round stud. It's all just falling apart here. My goodness. So that is just plugged into the 1x1 round stud on the back. I have the markings that you see in the movie. He has black and gray on the side, and then black in the back here, and then kind of black spot under his eyes. So that was something I wanted to represent. He can angle his head up and down, so he can make it look like he's eating. My goodness, it is just chaos today. What is happening? This is your fault, Dr. Malcolm. I blame you and your chaos.
That's chaos.
There we go. So yeah, he can be eating his food, or just standing and innocently looking around. He's got a couple of those newer style of horn pieces up at the top, and then one of these tooth plates underneath to represent his little billy goat beard. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this guy turned out. I'm using these kind of these inkwell pieces for the back feet, which plug in the regular way, so that that can be studded into the ground. But then these legs are built upside down, and they just have the flat tiles, so those don't plug into anything. So there he is. All right, you guys, and this is the part where I'm going to give you a comparison between my rendition of the T-Rex and the official Lego one. And I'd just like to preface this by saying that this is not meant to kind of do an apples to apples comparison and see like who did it better. That's not really the point of this. I was just kind of flabbergasted when I set about designing this, that right around the time that I was ready to unveil it, Lego had said that they were going to do exactly the same thing and released pictures of it. And so that just kind of created this thing in my mind of like, I'm so curious to see how Lego has interpreted this same thing, because I've never actually built a model kind of concurrently with Lego's official release before. So yeah, the aim of this is not to see who done it better. It's just to compare some of the interesting similarities that I found between the two builds. Oh, and also another quick thing. This is what Grant looks like next to the T-Rex. I know it's kind of hard to see with how far apart they are on the model, but this is like the height of a human being closer to the T-Rex. So there's that. Okay, so Lego's official T-Rex. Here it is. And the first thing that you notice is that it's a fair bit smaller. I would say it's volume-wise maybe a little over 2/3 the size. It's obviously not a fair comparison on height because Rexy has the stand that she's standing on, but if I just kind of put this at the same level, I can show you guys kind of where they come up to. You can see the body is a fair bit smaller. The legs are a fair bit smaller. The head is a little more comparable than I thought it would be. And then she has a really beefy tail in the official Lego one. So like my design, the tail relies on just side-to-side motion to get that nice swooshing look where you can, pose the tail like that. The Lego official one has used ball joints for their one and just stacked up a whole ton of them on each tail section. And then at the end here they have a little section that's just free to kind of move about, which is something that I ended up doing as well with mine. See, this is the section of the tail that I added after the last video was done because the length of the tail wasn't quite what I wanted it to be. So I ended up adding a section that can go up and down and side to side as well. And that's just done using one of these 1x1 clip one by one bar pieces attached to the clip that has the rounded end, so it allows for rotation. So there's that. Let me give you guys a little look at it from above, so you can kind of compare. Yeah, I'd say that they're actually closer in size than I thought that they would be. I thought that mine would be gigantic in comparison, but they're actually fairly comparable. Let's see. So so the arms are done, and again, a kind of a remarkably similar way where they've attached an assembly to ball joints, and then they have the same claw piece for the end here, and they've gone with the gray bar attachment pieces here for the fingers, and whereas I did a little bit more of a complex, more fragile, but what I consider to be more accurate looking rendition for mine. But again, this is a toy. This is meant for kids of all ages to be able to put together and play with and to be robust. So, you can actually move the head up and down, and you can just get in there and open the jaw. Whereas mine is much more in the vein of a display model. It's created for, screen accuracy, and the part count is insane. It's through the roof. And that's, we have very different goals, Lego and I, with our renditions. Actually, when I got this put together, I felt like the Lego one reminded me a lot of the Land Before Time depiction of a T-Rex. And I'm curious if the original designer, not the one that actually ended up adapting this into a set, but Mike Sayaki, the Lego designer, if his original gray version was based off of the Land Before Time, because it just looks very similar to me. The legs are actually kind of a similar idea in that they have a fixed angle, and then something that I experimented with for a long time to no avail was a system where I could pitch the whole body up and down around the hips, and that's something that they actually cracked fairly successfully on the Lego model, where you can actually move the body up and it will stay in place, which I think is an achievement that must be noted and commended. Okay, so I've taken off the leg to show you guys how they achieved that really solid feature there where the T-Rex can move up and down. And so what they have is this intricate assembly of gears attached to these ball joint pieces, and that just plugs into the leg. And actually, by the way, fairly similar way that the leg was constructed too, with everything being kind of centered around this structure going down in this direction and then plates on the other side. Again, I don't know, it's so weird to me to see the similarities. What makes this mechanism work, and where I wasn't able to get it to work, is that these ball joints are actually attached to these Technic axles, and as the gears rotate, the ball rotates as well, and so that is creating an awful lot of friction when it's inside of these two sockets right here. And so in doing that, basically by rotating the leg, you're having to rotate these ball joints, which have a ton of friction inside of the socket, and then that is what allows it to maintain that angle. And again, that's something that I experimented with for a good long time on my own model, and I wasn't able to crack a solution to it. So absolutely top marks to Lego for that. The feet are interesting. They have a very wide base of support. Mine are built into the base, so I was able to make them much more dainty and true to the screen depiction of the T-Rex. But these ones are designed to just be freestanding, so the toes can spread, and then I'm not sure I like how these claws are done, because they're individual pieces and you always have to kind of align them together, like each claw is two halves. But yeah, the toes being able to spread, and then they have this kind of little back heel thing that sticks out that helps to support it as well. So obviously, like, it gives it a slightly more cartoonish look with the big feet. Oh, and also they have the dew paws on their one, or the dew claws, I mean. They're on the back of the foot instead of on the side, which is where they really should be. But yeah, that's, I mean, I think it's a really innovative and unique solution, and it works really well. I mean, you can really pose the T-Rex in a lot of different ways and it'll stand up, so it definitely does the job of what it was trying to do. But I always tend to favor screen accuracy for my models. It's just how I think, and it's just what I like. So yeah, they designed the neck to be able to go up and down. My one relies, of course, on a complicated gear mechanism due to the weight of the head. This one, they built everything light enough that you could just rely on those click hinges to pop them up and down. The jaw opens and closes, and it has, the point of rotation is buried down inside of here. So it has this issue, or at least I think it's an issue, where when you open the jaws, they sit at kind of an unnatural angle, like it juts out pretty far. And that's something that I really wanted to avoid with my model. And so I made sure that the rotation point is accurate to the real thing, and it actually hinges from where the jaw opens, which on this model would be right here. And obviously they weren't able to figure out a way to do that. And it does have the tongue. It's just this little kind of sliver that kind of always gets stuck up in the top of the mouth there for that. Yeah, I like the way that they angled the eyes inward. They actually have this on a hinge, and then it goes in towards the skull, so it kind of has like a slightly forward-facing look. That's cool. I think a lot of these plates and stuff, are the directions and the corners that stick out are kind of fighting with each other, and I think a slightly more streamlined look would have really made this a bit more accurate to the screen model. But you know, it is what it is. And I really like the print on the eye, by the way, I should mention. That's pretty cool looking. I did think about seeing how that would look to switch out on my model. I actually haven't done that yet. But I actually really like the kind of I'm so used to the eye that I have on my one right now, so I just didn't bother switching it out. They do have a depiction in here of the same kind of little flappy bits in between the gums as well, but it's obviously way more simplistic and doesn't actually connect into the mouth unless it's kind of only this open, I guess. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, overall, obviously very, very similar color scheme because we're both drawing from the same reference material. They had a lot more access to dark tan pieces than I did when designing this model, so I have a lot more colors throughout mine due to necessity, and partly because I wanted to I'd seen some different models of the T-Rex over the years that are kind of like movie replicas where they have really nice brown and orange coloration, and I just was drawing from that. But yeah, I think overall it's just amazing to me that two people could go and set about designing the same thing and come up with something that in many ways shares so many similarities. I mean, like, just look at this, like this sloped assembly in here and the way that I achieved the exact same thing on the chest. And then on the interior of this, there's a Technic structure that's very reminiscent of the Technic structure for mine. It's just crazy to me, like the decision to then go right side up with the slopes on the top, which is the exact same thing I did. It blows my mind to think about how parallel thinking can be such a powerful thing, I guess. Even if you look at the jaw, there's the plates on the side construction, and then it goes to a kind of sideways built section for the end here, and that's actually what I ended up doing, except the whole bottom jaw would be this part right here, the way that it's built, and then I have the plates on the side just for this part. But again, very, very, very similar ideas. And you know, I wanted to initially have the head and the neck just be able to be posed up and down like this one can be, but again, the weight just made that impossible. But if I could have done it, I would have done it the way that Lego has. So yeah, really, really cool. Okay, you guys, I've put Rexy back in her natural habitat. Everything is reset, and there we go. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and for watching the video up to this point. If you've stuck with it, well done you. This was the first series that I started off this channel with, and it really has a lot of special meaning to me, and seeing it complete like this is really, it brings me a lot of joy, and I really hope that you guys have enjoyed going on this journey with me to creating this whole display. Thank you guys again so much for subscribing and for all the comments and feedback and stuff. It's been really wonderful, and I really hope to bring you guys a lot more really, really cool series in the future with different builds of different scales. And you know, again, I'm trying to grow the channel, and you guys' feedback and interactions have been really wonderful. So please keep that up. Like the video if you liked it. Subscribe if you're not already, if you're new here. Yeah, I will be bringing you guys a lot more stuff. So thanks again, and I will talk to you guys soon.